How can someone survive with nothing? When the world turns against you and the weather bites, what does it take to simply make it to morning? For Hannah Sorensen, that question arrived on October 15th, 1886. 3 weeks had passed since her father's funeral. 1 day had passed since her stepmother told her to leave. "The farm is mine now," Edith had said. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back tight, stretching the cruelty across her face. "Your father's will was clear. Everything goes to his wife. You're not his wife. You're not even my blood. Find somewhere else to be." Hannah tried to fight it. "This is my home. I was born in this house." But Edith just shook her head. "It was your home. Now it's mine. I've arranged for Mr. Harmon to drive you to town tomorrow morning. After that, you're not my concern." Hannah spent that night packing what she could carry. A canvas sack held her clothes, a few tools, and a small wooden box. Inside the box was her mother's wedding ring and a lock of her father's hair. She also took the quilt her grandmother had made before arthritis took her fingers. 23 pence was all she had to her name. She had saved it selling eggs. Eggs her stepmother now claimed belonged to the farm. 23 pence, a canvas sack, and the first snow of the season falling outside the window. Mr. Harmon drove her to town just as promised. The journey was silent. Neither of them spoke. He dropped her at the general store, then drove away without looking back. His obligation to Edith Sorensen was done. Hannah stood alone on the wooden sidewalk. The snow fell around her. She watched it and tried to figure out what to do next. Hannah had nowhere to go. No family lived in town. Her mother had been an only child. Her father's relatives were all back in Minnesota, too far to reach, even if she knew their addresses. The boarding house wanted 50 pence a night. The church offered help, but that meant working for Mrs. Patterson, and Mrs. Patterson had a reputation for driving her charity cases until they broke. Hannah thought about which doorway might offer the best shelter for the night. Then a voice spoke behind her. "You're Neil Sorensen's girl." She turned. An old man sat on a bench outside the store. He wore furs that looked older than she was. His white beard reached his chest, and his eyes were sharp despite the wrinkles around them. "I was," Hannah said. "He's dead now." "I heard," the old man replied. "Good man, your father. He helped me once when my mule went lame, didn't ask for anything." He gestured at the canvas sack at Hannah's feet. "That woman throw you out?" "She says the farm is hers now. Law says she's right," he said. "Doesn't make it just." He stood up, slowly but steadier than his age suggested. "Name's Jim Bridger, not the famous one. I just borrowed the name when I was young and stupid. You got somewhere to go?" "No." "Money for a room?" 23 pence. Old Jim Bridger nodded, as if this confirmed something he already knew. "Come with me. I want to show you something." Hannah followed him. She had no better options. The snow was falling harder now, and the temperature was dropping fast. He was the first person who had spoken to her with any kindness since her father got sick. He led her out of town, into the hills to the west. They followed a trail that was almost invisible until you were right on it. It wound through brush and rock, climbing steadily as the afternoon light faded. Then Jim Bridger stopped. He pulled aside a screen of dead branches. Behind it, a dark opening appeared in the hillside. It was a cave entrance, maybe 1.2 meters wide and 1.8 meters tall. It looked natural, but human hands had clearly arranged the rocks around it. You couldn't see it from the trail. You couldn't see it from anywhere unless you knew exactly where to look. Darkness waited inside. "Found this place 40 years ago," Jim said, stepping in. His voice echoed a little. "Never told nobody about it. Too useful to share with people who'd just ruin it." The tunnel was narrow, but not so tight it felt cramped. The walls were smooth, carved by water centuries before. It ran straight into the hillside for about 9 meters. Then it opened into a chamber that made Hannah stop and stare. The cave was 12 meters across, maybe 6 meters high. The ceiling curved like the inside of a skull. The floor was mostly flat stone, worn smooth by water and time. In the center, a pool of water steamed gently. The surface rippled with heat that rose from somewhere deep in the earth. "Hot spring," old Jim said. 104 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, never changes, never stops. He gestured at the steam, the walls, the high ceiling. The water comes up from below, heats the air, keeps the whole cave warm as a house with a fire going. He smiled. 58 degrees in here, even when it's 40 below zero outside. I've spent winters in this cave when I was too old or too broke to go anywhere else, never needed a fire, never burned a stick of wood. The earth does all the work. Hannah walked to the edge of the pool. She held her hand over the water. The heat rose against her palm, steady and constant. It felt like a warm bath. The air in the cave was humid, but comfortable. The chill of the October afternoon began to fade from her bones. It was a feeling she hadn't known since her father died. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. Old Jim sat down on a boulder near the pool. His old joints creaked. "Because your father helped me when he didn't have to. Because that woman who threw you out is the kind of person who makes me ashamed to be part of the same species." He looked at her. "And because I'm 73 years old, I'm not going to use this place much longer. Somebody should know about it. Somebody who will use it right. You're giving me a cave? I'm showing you a cave. What you do with it is your business." He pointed to different parts of the chamber. "Sleeping area over there. The rock holds the heat from the pool. Storage back in that alcove. Stays dry, never freezes. The pool itself is good for drinking if you take the water from the edge where it's cooler. There's an air shaft up through the ceiling that keeps the steam from building up too thick." Hannah had a cave, but could she truly make it a home and survive the real winter Jim mentioned? "What about winter?" Hannah asked. "Real winter?" Jim nodded. He had spent the winter of 62 in that cave. Snow piled so deep the wolves couldn't hunt. But inside, it stayed 56 degrees the whole time. The spring never stopped. The heat never faded. He told her to seal the entrance with hides or canvas, to sleep near the pool. She would be warmer, he promised, than anyone in town with their stoves and their firewood. That night, Hannah walked into the cave with her canvas sack and her 23 cents. Jim helped her gather materials, a frame of branches, a canvas cover he kept in the back alcove, strips of hide to close the gaps. By the time darkness fell, the cave was sealed, warm. The steam from the pool filled the air. It softened the cold she had carried in her lungs. She slept on a bed of dried grass near the edge of the pool. The stone beneath her felt warm from the water that flowed past. The air around her was humid, comfortable. She slept better than she had since her father died. Warm and safe. The winter couldn't touch her there. Making the cave livable took most of November. She gathered more dried grass for bedding and insulation. She built a simple shelf system in the storage alcove, using flat stones and branches. She created a cooking area near the entrance, small fires for food when she needed them, but she rarely did. The hot spring water was hot enough to cook eggs. To soften dried meat, Hannah learned to prepare most of her meals using nothing but the constant heat that rose from below. It was an ingenuity born of necessity, a skill that set her apart from everyone shivering in town. She hunted when she could, setting snares for rabbits in the hills around the cave. She gathered late berries, roots. The inner bark of certain trees Jim had taught her was edible. She traded rabbit pelts in town for flour and salt, and the few supplies she couldn't gather herself. People knew she lived somewhere in the hills, but they didn't know where. She didn't tell them. Early December, Hannah walked through town past the general store. Then she saw the wagon. Her stepmother, Edith Sorensen, sat wrapped in furs. Furs that used to belong to Hannah's father. A stranger drove the team. Edith spotted Hannah outside the store. Her face twisted. Surprise first, then a cold contempt. "Still alive, I see. I expected the cold would have taken you by now." Hannah met her gaze. "Sorry to disappoint you." Edith's eyes narrowed. "Where are you living? The church charity house? One of the cribs behind the saloon?" Hannah smiled. It was the first real smile she'd managed since October. "I have a place. Warm enough. Warmer than your house, probably." "I doubt that," Edith scoffed. "My house has a proper stove, 2 of them. I've already burned through 10 cords of wood, and it's not even Christmas." "That sounds expensive," Hannah said. "It's comfortable," Edith shot back. "Unlike whatever hole you've crawled into." Hannah didn't answer. She just kept smiling. It was the smile of someone who knew something Edith didn't. Her stepmother's confusion grew. Edith needed Hannah to be suffering. She needed to know there were consequences for being thrown out, that the natural order had been restored, with Hannah at the bottom where she belonged. But that smile said otherwise. Edith couldn't process it. "You'll freeze before spring," Edith said finally, her voice sharp. "Mark my words, they'll find you in some ditch, stiff as a board." "Maybe," Hannah said. "But I doubt it." The confrontation was over, but the worst winter was coming, and the town had no idea what Hannah knew. The winter of 1886 into 1887 became one of the worst the territory had ever seen. Snow started falling in November. It didn't stop until March. Temperatures plunged to 30 below zero Fahrenheit and stayed there for weeks at a time. Cattle froze standing up in the fields. Men got lost between their houses and barns, found only after the spring thaw. The railroad shut down. Towns ran low on supplies. People burned anything they could find, furniture, fence posts, anything that would catch fire. Hannah Sorensen spent that winter in a cave. Inside, it stayed a constant 14 degrees Celsius, no matter what the weather did outside. She sealed the entrance tight with canvas and hides. She slept near the warm pool. She cooked her food using the hot spring water. Hannah waited for spring with a quiet certainty. She had nothing to fear from the cold. She didn't burn a single log. Not one. The earth itself provided all the heat she needed. It rose from below, an endless supply flowing since before humans walked this continent. That hot spring was her stove, her furnace, her fireplace. It asked nothing from her, only that she'd be there to receive what it offered. Old Jim came to visit twice during that long winter. He checked on her. He brought supplies from sources he never explained. Jim seemed pleased by what he found, a clean, organized living space, a woman who had adapted to cave life better than most men he had known. "You're doing good," he said on his second visit in February. "Better than I expected." Hannah smiled. "I had a good teacher." Jim just nodded. "You had a starting point. The rest you figured out yourself." He accepted a cup of hot spring water from her, sipping it slowly. "What will you do come spring? Go back to town? Find a husband?" "I haven't decided," Hannah said. "Maybe I'll stay here." "Nobody stays here forever," Jim told her. "Even I left eventually, went back to town when I got too old to hunt." He looked around the cave at the improvements she had made. "But you could come back every winter. Build something better each time. This place will be here long after both of us are gone." Hannah had survived. But what became of the town, and specifically Edith? Spring arrived slowly that year. The snow began to melt in stages, each day revealing a little more of the world outside the cave. Hannah emerged in April to a landscape completely changed. Rivers ran high with meltwater. Meadows turned green. The first wildflowers pushed up through the mud. She walked into town and learned the winter's heavy cost. 3 families had lost everything, burning through their savings just trying to stay warm. One man froze in his cabin after his wood ran out. Nobody came to check on him for 3 days. The livestock losses were catastrophic. Whole herds died, leaving ranchers ruined. And Edith Sorensen had lost the farm. The news came from Mr. Harmon, the same man who had driven Hannah to town back in October. He found her outside the general store, looking healthier than anyone who had spent the winter in the hills had any right to look. "Your stepmother's gone," he said. "Packed up and left last week, headed back east, I think." Harmon explained that the bank took the farm in February. Edith couldn't make the payments. She had burned through all her money buying firewood at winter prices. "The farm is gone?" Hannah asked. "Being sold at auction next month," Harmon replied. He paused, then added, "Not that it matters to you." He looked at her with something like respect. "Where did you spend the winter? Everyone thought you were dead." "I found a warm place," Hannah said. "Must have been something special," he mused. "You look better than half the people in town." Hannah didn't explain. She just smiled. It was the same quiet smile she had given Edith in December. The smile of someone who knew something others didn't. She walked away to buy supplies with money she had earned selling rabbit pelts. She didn't buy the farm at auction. She didn't have that kind of money, and anyway, she didn't want it. The farm was the past, the life she had lost when her father died. The cave was the future. It was hers, in a way the farm had never been, a gift from a stranger who had seen something in her worth saving. She lived in that cave for 7 more winters, improving it each year. Her life revolved around the constant heat of the hot spring. In 1892, she married a surveyor named Thomas Whitfield. He had stumbled onto the cave by accident and fallen in love with the woman who lived there. They built a proper cabin near the cave entrance. It used the hot spring to heat water that flowed through pipes beneath the floor. This system worked on the same principle that had kept Hannah alive that first winter. The cabin never needed a traditional stove. The hot spring did all the work. It was the same heat that had been rising from the earth for thousands of years. The same water that had saved a 23-year-old girl with nothing but a canvas sack and 23 cents. Old Jim Bridger died peacefully in the spring of 1889. He was in a boarding house room, finally resting. Hannah was there with him at the end. She held his hand. She thanked him for the gift he had given her. "Just passing it on," he said. His voice was thin but clear. "Someone showed me that cave when I was young. Now you'll show it to someone else." That's how these things work. The cave is still there. The hot spring runs cooler now than it did in Hannah's day. A historical society marker stands near the entrance. It explains the geothermal features of the area. It mentions that early settlers sometimes used hot springs for heating. But the marker doesn't mention Hannah Sorensen. It doesn't mention old Jim Bridger. It doesn't speak of the winter of 1886 when a young woman survived without burning a single log. But the earth remembers. The spring keeps flowing. Somewhere in the steam that rises from that pool, the heat that Hannah Sorensen used to save her own life is still rising. It still warms the air. It still does what it has always done, since long before humans learned to take advantage of it. Some stories end with the protagonist defeating the villain. This one ends with something warmer. Hannah Sorensen packed her belongings into a canvas sack, facing a harsh winter with nothing. She found heat rising from the ground. It carried her through the coldest winter anyone could remember. The Earth's ancient, constant heat offers a profound alternative to human struggle against nature. It provides warmth and life where traditional methods fail. Subscribe if this kind of problem solving is your thing.